Are you a spiritual seeker on a quest for authentic spiritual awakening? If so, you probably realize that despite all of your intentions and all of your efforts, you cannot willfully mandate this transition. Why? Typically, the path requires a degree of egoic surrender that presently eludes you. Fortunately, it's easier to surrender more completely when your self-identity is less tied to your ego. And there is a process that can assist you. Facilitated spiritual experience leading to a shift in your self-identity. That really helps if you actually can have these kinds of spiritual experience that really makes it easier to shift your self-identity. This also makes it easier to unconditionally surrender. Those seeking awakening, when successful, generally experience awakening in a non-abiding fashion. After variable periods of time in an awakened state, they intermittently re-experience ego identification. It's nice that they've had a tremendously valuable experience that shifts their self-identity, but they do get dragged back through life's experiences. Unfortunately, the reason that happens is they are not sufficiently free of their limiting beliefs to remain in a sustained awakened state. This essentially occurs because they haven't fully worked through those beliefs and energetic blocks. The spiritual progression chart has been developed in part to illustrate another step in the process that is typically bypassed in the awakening process. And this particular stage is called the soul-embodied state of being. This is a transitional spiritual stage where self-identity is shared between ego and spiritual self. It is a stage where you can much more easily work through your limiting beliefs and accommodate to a shifting self-identity. The technology and associated coursework facilitates this process. And this is a state of being, unlike Source Awakened, where you can actually mandate this kind of transition. While you're on your quest for awakening, it's nice to get a head start on the cleanup process, or better still, avoid the need to do so afterwards. And during this process, you will enjoy the transition each step of the way. This chart is designed to assist individuals identify which state of being they exist in at any moment in time. Our state of being tends to be quite fluid. We may be soul-embodied in session or in the morning, and by later in the day, be firmly entrenched in an ego-identified state of being. In general, it's not too difficult to identify where in the chart you reside most of the time. In accordance with that state of being, this chart can be useful in guiding you as to which activities may benefit you the most in your progression. The following definitions further explain these states of being. The ego-identified person is a person who is primarily self-identified with their beliefs. They actually believe that they are their beliefs. They often respond in a manner consistent with their conditioning and regularly employ their subconscious reactive coping strategies without any awareness that they are doing so. They may believe that they have a soul or some spiritual aspect to themselves, but they don't believe they are that spiritual being. Their life is a never-ending series of ups and downs, essentially drama, based upon life's events. They often seek to exert control when they can, or they passively follow groupthink and norms. They tend to like rules. They tend to live in a reactive manner, but may overcompensate by being willfully purposeful much of the time. In that case, they may not like rules. They're generally not receptive to spiritual influences, and they rarely consider their spiritual path. The soul-embodied individual, in their fully embodied form, is regularly present throughout their body as their spiritual self or soul. They self-identify as their soul or higher self. They rarely experience fear-based emotions and do not regularly employ their coping strategies, although when they do, they are consciously aware in the process. They recognize that their beliefs are not truths and that they represent limitations which filter their perceptions and their experiences. They tend to be actively working on releasing their beliefs. They recognize that they are not in control of outcomes and are generally less attached to them. They tend to be accepting and non-judgmental, and they recognize some of the spiritual underpinnings of life. They're also aware of their energetic self. In the Source Awakened state, this individual realizes they are Source. They are abidingly consciously aware. They are without an egoic sense of self, so they don't have that sense of personal self, but they maintain a sense of being in the material world. They realize in a profound and absolute way that they and their reality are not what they previously thought. They can live and act in the material world, but their sense of self and reality transcends the material world. Source Manifest, on the other hand, these are living masters. This is a situation that is extremely rare and rarely public. They are essentially the unknown, and they radiate pure spirit. Unlikely that you're going to happen upon one of these individuals and actually know it.